Hey everybody, how you doing? It's your guy, Rick Alaimo, with episode 3 of my Not an Option podcast. Thank you to everyone that's been viewing it and subscribing. If you can, keep joining us every week. We're going to be airing every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. For my friends back in Chicago, that's 1 o'clock Central Standard Time. I'm going to ask you, if you can, this week, start sharing my podcast. I really want to make this thing work. I'm having fun with it. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. If you like it, share it. If you don't like it, don't share it. Same thing like my book. It's a good time to mention it. It's called Not an Option. That's what this podcast is based off of. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today is based off of the book. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to talk about today that's not in the book. And we're going to touch on a lot of my life. Again, this is the book, Not an Option. It's on Amazon. It's by Frank Antonio. That's my author name, Frank Antonio, Not an Option. Check it out. It is a good read. I've got a lot of positive feedback on it, a lot of good reviews. It's selling pretty good on Amazon, and you might like it. You might want to check it out. This episode, we're going to touch on my life. Me growing up, me being a young child, my teenage years, my adult years, the years I become the old man I am today. And now we're going to touch on a lot of stuff, trials and tribulations. I want to relate to a lot of my viewers. I want you guys to see that there's a lot of things relatable in my life, probably to yours. I hope you can relate to something that I talk about today in your life. A lot of what I want to do with this podcast is grow together. We can relate and grow ourselves mentally and emotionally together, because I'm not where I want to be in life yet. I'm getting there. I'm sure all of you aren't exactly where you want to be in life. I want this to be a very interactive podcast. I want everyone that watches it to get something from it. But I also want you to learn a little bit about myself, where I come from, what I've done in my life, and how I've gotten here. It hasn't been easy. It's been fun. It's been a pain in the ass sometimes, but it hasn't been easy. So let's talk a little bit more about what made Rick. I was born in Melrose Park, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. I was born and raised in Chicago. I grew up my young life in Chicago. I grew up till I was about 8 years old in a wealthier area of Chicago. It's called Lincoln Park. Back in the 90s and 2000, or not even the 2000s, back in the 80s and 90s, that was a very prominent area of Chicago. My dad had a really good job. Plus he did other things on the side. We're not going to talk about all that today, but we're just going to say he had a very good job and he did what he had to do to support his family. My mom was a stay-at-home mother. And we lived a good life. I've spoke a few times about my sister passing away. And I've had a few people text me and message me. They wanted to know more about my sister and what happened to her. So I'll get into that a little bit. With respect to my family's private life, I'm not going to indulge too deep, but I will let you know, my sister, her name was Jessica. She was born with half a heart. She only lived a very short time in life. During that time, she had multiple surgeries. And she was a miracle baby to make it as long as she did. And from the stories I got from my dad, she probably would have lived a little bit longer, but they gave her some medication for a test, and I guess that medication should not have been given to her, and it ended her life. My sister dying as a baby was really hard on my family, not just my parents, not just me and my sister, because I have another sister also. Her name is Gina. She's younger than me. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. And I also have a brother that we adopted at birth. That happened a little later in my life. I was like 12 or 13 years old when we adopted him. He was born 3 months premature. and we brought him into our family. His mom worked for my mom with the cleaning company, and we brought him into our family and raised him. And he's my brother. We've had him since birth. So that's how my younger brother was brought into my life. Now back to my sister's situation. My baby sister Jessica, after she passed away, like I said, it was really hard on our family. We had a very strong, tight-knit family back then, and my aunts, my uncles, everybody was over at our house all the time. I remember that. Everyone was just really sad, obviously sad of what happened. Everyone grieved a different way. My mom still to this day has a very hard time with it. A lot of people, even myself, don't understand what it's like to bury a child. Yeah, I lost my sister, but I was so young and she was in the hospital so much. I didn't really get to know her, but she was my blood and she was my sister, and I seen her plenty of times in the hospital. But as a mother, to carry her, and my father and my mother created her, and to lose a child, many of you can probably relate that have lost a child or someone very special in your life. It took a toll on my family in many different ways. The way my mom coped, she kind of just got real quiet, knuckled down, and had to help take care of us out of default, because the way my dad coped with it was kind of the total opposite. He got very angry at God, got very angry at life, got very angry at the world for taking his daughter away from him. We're Italian and Sicilian, and we have strong Italian roots. That was his Sicilian little princess. She had the dark hair, the brown eyes. Me and my sister both have dark brown hair and blue eyes, and my dad has black hair and brown eyes, and my sister Jessica had the black hair and the brown eyes. So not that he had a bigger connection with my sister than me and my other sister, but that was his little Italian Sicilian princess baby. And when she was taken from him, he took it pretty hard. And to say he went off the rails, I don't want to say is an understatement, because I'm never going to disrespect my father, but my dad took it kind of hard, and he went on a path of self-destruction. And that self-destruction not only affected his life, but really affected our lives dramatically. My mom was trying to hold everything together. She started working, taking on some jobs, a lot of cleaning jobs, worked at some retail stores, did what she could to hold things together. My dad had a great job, made really good money, but he started doing things. He formed a drug habit. Cocaine was his drug of choice. He's been clean and sober now for over 20 years, so I don't want to make my dad sound like he's an active drug addict. But back then, he turned to drugs to help with the pain of losing his daughter. And with that drug habit, it was a pretty sizable drug habit. And to feed that drug habit, he turned into doing a life of even more crime than he was involved with before. And that crime and those choices cost him to lose his very high-paying job, and which in turn cost us to lose our lifestyle of living where we did. And we lost everything. We wound up going from, like I said, a very wealthy neighborhood in Chicago to one of the worst neighborhoods in Chicago. We had to move to Humboldt Park. My mom's father, my grandfather, left a house to my mother, and it was a ran down, beat up house in Humboldt Park, but it was a roof over our head. So we moved to that home. I was about 9 years old, and we moved to that house in Humboldt Park, and I was the only Italian white kid in the whole neighborhood. And I've touched on it, so I'm not going to get too deep in it, but yeah, it was rough. It was rough being who I was in that environment. But we made do. We had to manipulate our life to survive, and we went into survival mode. My dad, he wasn't around. He was out on his path. He came and went. We seen him periodically. And with that, we wound up on welfare. We were dirt poor. I'm not complaining. I'm not crying about it, because even though we were dirt poor on welfare, we had a lot of fun. We lived a fun life. Mom was around. She made it fun. My dad was always there to protect us if anything went bad. He was always the guy that showed up if the situation got too bad in the neighborhood. He showed his face, and like I said, a lot of people feared him for his status of who he was with some different organizations and the people he knew. We used to have to wait in lines for food. We used to have to wait in line for cheese, for free government food. We had a few dogs. We would have to go and once a month wait in line for dog food to feed the animals. I know a lot of people are saying, why would you have animals if you don't have the money to feed them? We needed them to protect the house, so we would wait in line for free food for the dogs. We would wait in line for free food for us. My mom would get her welfare every month. My mom took on cleaning jobs. I remember I was young. I was about 9 years old, 10 years old. And I would go clean apartments and office buildings late at night. So like when everyone was getting ready to go to bed for school, I was actually getting on a CTA bus with my mom with a bucket full of cleaning supplies and a vacuum. Now imagine riding public transportation with a vacuum in your hand. It's kind of embarrassing, but we had to do it. We had to eat. We had to survive. My mom's mother, my grandmother, lived with us. She had Alzheimer's pretty bad. The neighborhood we lived in was so bad where we lived. This lady had Alzheimer's, my grandmother, and I remember one time she went to go get her disability check, and she used to walk to the currency exchange. And when she walked to the currency exchange one day, 3 guys jumped her and beat a 60-year-old woman half to death for her check. And that was just the type of neighborhood and environment we had to move to. We remember getting the phone call that she was laying in an alley beaten half to death for her welfare check, or her disability check. And it just tells you the type of animals we were surrounded by. And this was in broad daylight. It wasn't like she walked late at night. This was at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was just a bad place to live. Made me the person I am. Taught me a lot about character, a lot about survival. And it also brought out my entrepreneurial spirit to become more in life, to not want to settle, to see my poor mom working for people for mere dollars, barely making ends meet. And that made me want more. I never wanted to have a boss over my head controlling my life. And seeing my mother do all that and seeing the way we lived made me know I wanted more for my kids. So I started working, like I said, at 9 years old, taking the bus. We would get home sometimes at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning from cleaning. Then, because of where we lived and the type of neighborhood it was, I couldn't go to school there because I was getting beat up and jumped on a daily basis by groups of kids for whatever I had, a hat, a jacket, shoes. I'd have to fight for everything. So my mom did not want me going to that school district anymore. So she talked to my Aunt Maria, and I was able to go to her school district, where actually that's where all my friends and my really good friends that I actually call family, I call them my cousins, but they're just good friends of mine. And that's the way it was in that neighborhood. It was all Italian and Hispanic. Everybody was close-knit. My mom had grew up in that neighborhood when she was a kid. My aunt and uncle lived there, and I was able to use their address to go to school for a better education and just a better environment. So to go to school there, I'd have to get up. School would start at, say, 8 o'clock. At 9 years old, 10 years old, I had to go and catch public transportation, 2 or 3 buses with a bus pass at like 6:30 in the morning. I'd have to go rain, snow, or shine, cold, whatever, and go to school. And I did it every day. And it was actually pretty cool because there was a truck stop there where the bus came. And some of the truck drivers got to know me, and I used to eat breakfast. They'd buy me breakfast every morning. I'd sit down with these guys in their 40s and 50s and 60s and eat breakfast with these guys. And it was pretty cool, you know, and that's how I said about my maturity. I got to hang around and be around older guys and just learn how the world worked from some of their stories and listening to them bullshit and talk. And it was pretty good. By the time I was 13, my dad was in and out of rehabs, and he had started doing construction work with my uncle that had a company. I had spoke up a little bit about that, how my dad in the first episode took over a pretty good sized job. But anyway, I was working with them from the time I was 13 all summer. Couldn't wait for summers to get there. I absolutely hated school. I loved all my friends and family I went to school with. I played every sport under the sun. Football, hockey, baseball, basketball, wrestling. I even did gymnastics. I did everything. I played all types of sports, and I had a blast of the after school activities in the other neighborhood. You know, like I said, I did everything in my life in the other neighborhood. So my life involved waking up at 6:30, going to school, after school, not heading home, staying in that neighborhood, going to the local park, Smith Park, doing all my after school activities at the park with all my great friends that I call family and cousins. We were on all the same teams together. We played all the same sports together. We were a tight-knit group. School, for that reason, was fun for me because we just had each other all the time, and we just always got into some kind of goofy trouble or mess, and it was fun. Then I would go, so there, I would be at the park till about 5, 6 o'clock. Then I would just walk home. It was about 4 or 5 miles. I would just walk home every day. And so I walk home, get home about 7:30, 8 o'clock. Then I would eat dinner. My grandmother always made dinner if my mom was working. If my mom was home, she made dinner. You know, like we have McDonald's and fast food all the time now. That was a luxury. If you got a McDonald's or some fast food, it was a luxury. We didn't have all that as kids, you know. So nowadays it's like a regular thing. Back then it was a luxury. If food was cooked every night at my house, whether it was a grilled cheese sandwich or pasta, we always had dinner. Like I said, my mom's mom, my grandmother made it. Or my mom, if she was home, she made it if she wasn't working. So that's what I'm saying. I wasn't like an abused, neglected child. We were just born. I was just raised in a bad environment and some bad circumstances around my life. So after we would eat dinner, do some homework if I had some. Normally I told my mom I didn't because I hated school. So I just didn't do the homework unless she went through my book bag and found it. And then I'd have to get on a bus with her about 9:30, 10 o'clock and go to the job and go clean office buildings and get home about 1, 2 o'clock, get 4 or 5 hours of sleep and start the whole routine over the next day. And I don't regret it one bit. It gave me my work ethic. It gave me my hustle. It gave me my maturity. It gave me my drive in life. To see my poor mother going through that on a daily basis, to have to go through that at such a young age. So back to the construction. I started working construction at 13 all summer long, and I had a passion for construction right off the bat. My uncle and my dad always put me with the best guys to learn the best trades and to be the best at those trades from a really young age. I had to work my ass off. I had to carry all their tools. I had to hump all the drywall at 13. I mean, the drywall sheets weighed more than I did almost. But we were carrying them and learning a lot about construction. And I wound up getting a passion for construction. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. I seen the guys that were working for my uncle and my dad showing up in the nicer trucks, and the ones that didn't have problems with drinking or gambling or drugs had nice stuff. And I knew that's the life I wanted, because one thing I never really did was mess with any hard drugs. So I knew I wasn't going to go down that path, because I seen what drugs did to my family with my dad, and I knew I would never touch him, because I don't know if I have his addictive personality. He wasn't a bad person when he turned to cocaine. He did cocaine, and he had an addictive personality, and it got a hold of him. And when it got a hold of him, it didn't let go. No man wants to destroy his family the way we were destroyed. No man wants to put his family through that, even if he lost a child. He just wanted to ease his pain. He just wanted to live a life where he wasn't hurting. And he happened to try a drug that got a hold of him. And it got a hold of him, and it ruined our life. But he turned it around. And I knew at 13 I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do those drugs. I didn't want to ever ruin my family or hurt my family the way we were hurting. And I knew that I could have what the guys in construction that didn't do those bad things could have. So I worked my ass off, did all the hard labor, and just kept my ears open and my mouth shut, like my grandfather taught me, my dad's dad. And I learned a lot. And by the time I was 16 years old, I was working the summers, and I started running crews at 16 years old in the summers, remodeling hotels. By the time I was 17, I was just out of high school, and I was running crews full time around the country doing hotel remodeling. And like I said, that was very difficult at first, because I'm 17 years old. Everyone thinks I got the position because my dad and my uncle owned the company. But in reality, I showed all the people that I could work whole circles around them and outwork them, and showed them why I should be the boss. And that at 16, 17 years old showed me what I wanted in my life. I wanted to be the boss. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to own my own company, and I wanted to see where this construction thing took me. And it's given me a good life. I've done construction since I was 13. I'm 47 now. So that's 34 years of my life dedicated to construction in some form or fathom. And I really appreciate the life that construction's given me, and I love construction and have a passion for it. So by the time I was 17, I was running these crews. I have this deep passion for construction. It's really taught me a lot. It's really made me see a way to get ahead in life. I was also doing a lot of hustling and a lot of survival stuff. And that's part of my entrepreneurial spirit. I was doing whatever I could do to give myself and my future family, because I knew I wanted kids and to get married eventually sometime in life. At 17, I wasn't really thinking about getting married, but I knew I was going to eventually have a family, and I wanted to have life skills to provide for that family. I've always been a pretty reliable, good person. I've always been a person that cared about people. And so, I knew I was going to really care about my family. And by the time I was 17, I had my first godchild. Well, I'm 47 now, and I've actually got 13 godchildren. And to me, that's a testament of who I am, because, 10, 12 people have picked me over my life to be their kid's godfather. Makes me very happy. And I thank everyone that asked me to be their child's godfather. And I hope I've succeeded and fulfilled my obligations. And if I haven't, or if I haven't been in their life as much as I would like to, I just want all of my godchildren to know I love you. And I'm very proud to be your godfather. The reason I'm talking about that is it's just a testament to being a good person, and other people see that, and it's a reflection of you, and it's a testament to you when you get asked to be that person in their child's life. It's a very important thing to me. When I was 16, I was doing security for a nightclub. I had a fake ID, and I was running the security for a security company at the door and in the back room where they would bring the live performers. And it was a club that had a lot of freestyle music and house music. So I got to know a lot of freestyle groups from around the country, and I was in the back with them while they were getting ready, and I got to know all the singers and I got to know all their managers. Well, one night a group showed up from Chicago and their manager never showed up, and they were kind of freaking out. They didn't know what to do. So I started talking to them in the back room, and I coaxed them, and this is my mind where it goes. I had just had conversations with other managers, and I was picking their brain at 16 years old because it intrigued me. I just wanted to learn more about what they did. I mean, I seen them driving nice cars. I seen them staying in hotels, flying all around the country. It was intriguing to me. So I started picking their brains, you know. And when this singing group, VIP, Voices in Poetry, when their manager didn't show up, I started having a conversation with the lead singer. Long story short, I offered to become their manager after a few conversations with them when their manager blew them off a few times. I had zero management experience. I just had the knowledge I got from conversations with these other managers and singing groups and how they got from, I always ask, like, how did you get from starting off to where you're at now and where do you want to be? I always ask the right questions. Well, from asking those questions, I got a lot of knowledge. So most people would have just took that knowledge and just sat on it and, you know, maybe been prepared for a Jeopardy episode. But I took that knowledge and wanted to run with it. So as soon as I seen an opportunity where this group needed a manager, and I'm 16 years old, I offered this group to do it. And they liked that I had connections with all these managers. I had all their phone numbers. I had all the managers from around the country's phone numbers. And I had a lot of information that was pretty vital to running a singing group. So I started managing them. By the time I was 17, 18 years old, I had managed them for a couple of years. We started performing around the country. We got on with the Lowrider show. We started performing with the Lowrider show. And life was fun. The girls, I mean, the money. I was 17, 18 years old, fake ID. I would have $700, $800 bar tabs when we would go out. I was the guy that would pick the girls from off the stage for the guys to go back to the hotels and everything. So the reason I'm saying that is it was a fun life. It was a lot of fun, just something that I got thrown into because I kept my mouth shut and my ears open. I learned the business and I translated that into a business. I opened up my own managing company. I wound up managing a couple singing groups for a while there. And it was pretty good. At that same time, my mother had now transitioned into becoming a social worker. And I remember I was 17 years old and I had all these connections in the industry. And one of my mom's clients was a mother who had a baby that was bouncing on the dad's knee and fell off the dad's knee and he broke his neck and he was paralyzed from the neck down. So I thought at 17, I heard the story and I felt horrible. I met this kid a bunch of times and I was like, man, this kid could really use help. They weren't from a wealthy family. They were barely getting by. So with my mom and my dad's help, and now at this time I was remodeling hotels with the construction. I was running the singing group. I had started my own car club I had about 25 cars in a car club that I had started because once I started making money, I had really nice things. Because when you grow up with nothing, you don't really understand money. So you make money fast and you spend it fast. And I had really nice cars. I had really nice clothes. I had really nice everything. So with that, I threw a fundraiser for the baby. And we were remodeling a hotel downtown Chicago, a really high-end hotel. So my mom got on the phone and we started making phone calls and we wound up talking to an airline. We got all the airline tickets covered to fly in. We had over 17 acts perform in one night for us for this fundraiser. It was the largest freestyle and house music event and fundraising event ever at that time in the city of Chicago area. And what I did was, my entrepreneur mind, I thought of every way we could cut corners and save money and make as much money as we could for the baby. So what did we do? We got the airline tickets. Then I got somebody in my local area to donate one of the biggest hall and most beautiful halls in the area to the cause. Then I had the car club that I was part of. So these singers had the best time of their life, they said. We didn't pick them up in a limo. We drove down to the airport in 25 custom vehicles to pick up them, their managers, and their whoever was in their singing groups. And we drove them back to their hotel. And we transported them around in custom vehicles, in custom cars. It was cool. It was fun. And the reason I'm saying this is I always thought outside the box. And I always thought of ways to make something work and to make something profitable. So we raised a lot of money, helped to buy the child a wheelchair accessible van and give the family some money. And I was very proud of that. You know, at 17, I was on the front page of the newspaper. It was all over the news. And it was for a really good cause. And I was very proud of that. And I've done a lot of fundraising and a lot of stuff since then. And I really enjoy giving back. At 18 and 19, you know, during all this, not only was I working, managing a singing group, I was still hustling, and I still had a chip on my shoulder about why my dad was never around. I was still pissed off at the world of why I had to work so early in life, why I didn't have all the nice things that my friends and cousins had. So I was hustling a lot, you know, doing a lot of stuff I'm not proud of back then. My hustling had got me involved with some bad people for a lot of my life. They're bad in the general public's eyes. You know, they were always good to me. We always had a lot of good times, fun times, but we didn't do everything by the book. So when you're doing stuff like that, you make some enemies too. And I had been shot at least 10, 15 times in my life at that point. In one summer, I buried 17 people that I knew between Chicago and the suburbs. 17 people I knew died within a 13-month period. And I went to 17 funerals. And I wasn't even 19 years old yet. So the reason I'm talking about this is I didn't care if I lived or died. I didn't care about life. I didn't care if I woke up the next day. I came from nothing. I had a lot of stuff I thought at that point in my life. And I didn't give a shit if I seen tomorrow. Or I didn't give a shit if I got 10 years in jail. I could do that standing on my head with all the people I knew that were locked up. So I didn't really care. And I lived life like I didn't care. But I also, like I told you, I can blend with the gangbangers and the street guys, and I can blend with the executives and the CEOs. So I was able to live that street life and still put on fundraisers and manage singing groups and run construction companies. I did all this at the same time. I was doing all this at the same time, intertwining the things together and, you know, living on 3-4 hours of sleep a night. I still do. I lived my life like that till I was about 19 years old. When I was 19, my high school sweetheart, she got pregnant. I had a baby on the way. And most people at 19 would have been scared shitless. We were excited because she came from nothing. She had bad, you know, background. Her family had some problems and she didn't have the best upbringing. I didn't have the best upbringing. That's what kind of brought us together. She was pregnant with my son, Tony. And we were very excited. And I was about to be a father at 19, well, about 20 when he was going to be born. And I wasn't scared one bit. I was actually excited. I started feeling something I wanted to live for. When she told me, when I heard the heartbeat, when I went to the doctor's appointments, everything that led up to him being born, I was getting more excited, and I was actually starting to value life because I had a life I had to take care of now. My first time I had a responsibility outside of myself and my mom and my family, but this was my child, and I was excited. Antonio was born June 24th of 99. And when I cut that umbilical cord when he was born, my whole life changed. I stopped drinking. I stopped going out and partying. I stopped doing illegal stuff. I stopped everything. And I just wanted to be around him. I had the construction. I had the managing the singing groups. And at that point, I had also opened up a mobile auto detailing company. I'll get back into that in a second. But what I did have to face was more adversity. While she was pregnant with my son, I was remodeling a hotel in Wisconsin, and one of the guys that works for me had an interaction with somebody at a pool hall. I was in there. It was a bar with a pool tables, and I was in there on a fake ID. And long story short, a big fight broke out, and I wound up taking over the fight for him, and I got accused of hitting this guy with multiple pool balls, breaking a pool stick over his head, and then stabbing him with the broken pool stick. So I'm 19. Everything else in my life is going great for me. I've got multiple businesses. My girlfriend is pregnant with my first son. Got a baby on the way. And here, I catch an attempted murder case. Now, I went to jail, got bonded out, went to court a couple times. They raised my charges, got rearrested, bonded out. And then I wound up going to trial for 7 months fighting this case. Wound up beating the case, but I was looking at 30 years in prison. And they don't do day for day. I would have to serve 85% of my time. I'm scared now. And I realize I got to change my life. I got a baby on the way. Now I have something to really live for. I was put in a bad situation. Thank God again. I'm looking at 30 years. And after 7 months of fighting this thing, we beat the case. And I realized it's time for me to change my life. Change the surroundings I put myself in. Change the people I put myself around. And I decided I'm just going to go to straight and narrow. Stay at home with my son when I'm not working. Stop hustling and be a good father. And I do that. And in doing that, made me better, made my companies grow better because I wasn't focusing on a million external things. I focused on the main things. And that's what a lot of people got to learn is to grow a company, to grow a business, or to grow and get better positions at the companies you work for. You got to dedicate yourself. And I dedicated myself and I grew my companies. Not only was I doing the construction at that time, I had also opened up a mobile auto detailing business, and life was good. I just beat the case. Antonio was born. My baby Tony was born. I cut that umbilical cord, changed my life. I'm home. But me and my ex started fighting a lot. And it was just high school sweetheart. We had a kid young, a lot of stress. Neither one of us were wrong, but we did a lot of things that we regret. Tony was born and everyone was excited. My family, her family. We had our own place, me and her. But the stress of just being young parents weighed a toll, and we separated. And we made some bad choices as young parents. Some choices that we didn't make with our other kids because we got separated. And she wound up having a family and getting remarried. And I wound up getting, well, not remarried, married. We were never married. She wound up getting married and having other kids. And I wound up getting married and having another son. And we didn't make those same mistakes. But unfortunately, as young parents, we made some mistakes, separated young parents. And we fought a lot in front of our son. We said bad things about each other in front of our son. And it weighed a toll on my first son. I had a great relationship with my son growing up. You know, my son was like my best friend. I did everything I could around Tony. Being a young father, I was able to be really involved in his life and teach him sports and how to ride a bike and teach him a lot of stuff. And, you know, just teach him how to be a young man. And his mom, she was good to him. And she was a great mother with him. That was her precious little son. And we did the best we could to raise him right, but we also made a lot of mistakes. And it affected his life. Not only the fighting between me and her in front of him, being separated, but also me focusing so hard on running a company, working 7 days a week, 12, 14-hour days to grow this company. I wasn't in his life as much as I wanted to be, but I was trying so hard to give him a life that I didn't have. And I regret that every day. You know, there's one thing, you can make money, and I've made a lot of money, I've lost a lot of money, but you can't get back time. And remember this, that time you have with your kids, that time you have with your families, it's irreplaceable. The stuff you say in front of your kids, the stuff you do in front of your kids. The guy that I talked about before, his name was Hans, he told me one of the things I've learned in my life is so important. If you won't text it or say it or do it on the front page of a newspaper, don't say it or do it. Keep it inside you, because it's not worth saying. And that's stuck in my head, because if it's not something I'm willing to broadcast across the country on the front page of a newspaper, it's probably not meant to be said. You could think it, but don't say it. And I've remembered that saying for my whole life. I just wish I would have followed some of that with my son. Like I said, my son was my best friend. I loved that kid to death. I still love him to death. And I'm going to be honest, this is all about honesty in my life. I don't have the same relationship I had with him when he was younger. Some stuff happened, and my son got married. My son went to college. He got married, met his sweetheart there. And because of differences between me and his mom, and him feeling he had to choose and being put in the middle of our bullshit, I wasn't even invited to his wedding. It wasn't because he didn't want to invite me because he hated me. He got married on a whim, on a vacation with his mom and his girlfriend. So I never even seen my son get married. My son heard a lot of bad stories about me. A lot of things that I've done or was accused of doing to people or stuff. And stuff I'm not proud of. And it cost me my relationship with my firstborn. I haven't had constant communication with my son now for 5 years, and it breaks my heart every day. It's the hardest thing I go through. I've got a 26-year-old son that I adore. I would die for. I would kill for. And I don't get to see him. And I don't get to talk to him. And it's because of the choices and decisions I made when I was younger. And all I can tell you is, man, spend the time you have wisely with your kids. Because nothing hurts more than not seeing or talking to your kids. And if you have an opportunity to fix a bad relationship with your kids, no matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, if you still have an opportunity to talk to your parent or your kids, I would highly recommend fixing that, because you don't get time back. You only get one mom. You only get one set of kids. You only get one dad. You only get one set of kids. And every day you don't talk to them is a travesty. It's a blessing to have those people in your life. And I miss it every single day. So this is hard for me to talk about. But after we separated, me and Tony's mom, I remember, it's kind of funny, I was separated, and the lady that cut my hair would bounce around from different hair salons to hair salons, wherever would pay her the most money. And she went to this real high-end hair salon, and it was pretty expensive for me to get my hair cut there, but my mom actually went there to get her hair done and knew the owner. So I went there, and while she was cutting my hair, I had to stop. I went to the bathroom, and when I went to the bathroom, I seen the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in the world sitting in a room with two other women, the owner that I knew and some older woman. So I went back to the hair station, and I asked the lady that was cutting my hair, I was like, hey, who's that lady sitting in the back room with the owner? I was like, she don't have a wedding ring on, and she told me, oh, that's Jeanette. And I said, oh, man, she's beautiful. Give her my number. She's like, I'm not giving her your number. She's like, that's not how it works. She's like, go give her your number. I'm like, she's in the room with two people. I'm not going to give her my number in there. So I was so attracted to her. I went back to this bougie hair salon 3 days in a row. I bought mousse that I don't even use. I bought like some kind of body lotion I don't even use one day. I just kept going in there and going to the bathroom to pass that office to see if I could catch her by herself. And finally on the third day I went in there and she was in the office by herself. So I made a little casual conversation with her, wound up getting her phone number, and we wound up talking. And we talked for probably about a week straight. And we would fall asleep on the phone. We had such great conversation. And something about our conversations, I just knew that Jeanette was the one. I knew right away from our conversations how pure her soul was, how beautiful she was, how beautiful her whole attitude about her, her composure, her heart. She was just a beautiful person inside and out. And I just felt she was the one. I felt so strongly that she was the one that when the lady that cut my hair told me who she was the manager of the salon. Well, in our phone conversations, I had found out that she wasn't the manager of the salon, that her family had bought the hair salon. Now, you're talking about a kid that came from nothing, grew up in the ghetto, had a bunch of thuggish ways about him, and he meets like this princess. I was like, how the hell do I impress her? So at the time, I had a Chevy Blazer with big rims on it and a big boombox sound system. And it was the one that I had in the car club. And I was like, I can't pull up to my date to pick her up in this thing. And I'm supposed to be some construction owner. That day of my date, I'll never forget this. I went to the used car lot. I traded my car in to get a Dodge Ram work pickup truck. It was nice. It had nice wheels and everything because I always got to have nice looking cars. But on the day of, just to impress some girl I was going out on a date with, that's how much I knew she was the one. I traded my car that I loved in for a nice looking work truck. And I show up and man, first thing she did was compliment my truck. Oh my God, this is a beautiful truck. It's such a nice pickup truck and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I did it. I got the cool points. So we went out on our date. And I'm going to tell you a quick story because I got to wrap this thing up sooner than later. But we were out on a date. She has this purse. It was one of them Louis Vuitton purses with the multiple colors in it. And I made a comment to her. I'm like, man, I was like, those purses are pretty expensive, huh? And she's like, yeah, they can be. She's like, but just so you know, I bought this out of the trunk of a car of someone that came by the salon selling them. I was like, yes, I'm marrying you. I was like, you buy, I was like, my whole life I bought stuff out of the trunks of cars or off the back of a truck. I was like, you bought your expensive purse out of a trunk? I was like, I'm marrying you. And that was our first date. I told her that. And that's when I knew I was going to marry this lady. You know, when I showed up to her house that day to pick her up, because back in our day, two people didn't just meet at a location. You actually went and picked the woman up for the date. So I went to her house and I picked her up. And I'll never forget, I showed up to her house. She had this huge 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath house in a really nice area, Chicago suburb. And I'm like, wow, your parents home? And she looked at me and started laughing. Because I mean, I had a nice condo when I was living with my ex, but I didn't have a house. And to me, like, home ownership was an afterthought because I never grew up. I just wanted to get food on our plate, let alone be a homeowner. So she started laughing. She's like, no, this is my house. I own it. I was like, holy shit, you own this big, beautiful house. It's just you and your daughter that live here? I had showed up to that date with nice dress pants on and a nice sweater. And I was trying so hard to impress her. And she showed up with just a sweater and jeans. And she's like, oh, I didn't know we were going somewhere fancy. I'm like, wait, we're not. So I ran back to my car and I had jeans in my car so I could change because I had no idea how to act around her. And you know what? The point of this story is I just had to be normal. And that's what made our relationship so easy. So I mentioned that we dated for 3 years or 2 years. We dated for 2 years. Man, we had some of the best times. And 2 years later, we wound up getting married. And I got my bonus daughter. I got my stepdaughter, Jordan. And my life changed at that point for nothing but greatness after that. My whole life, even I've had a ton of ups and downs. I met my soulmate. I met the person that I adore in the world. And she adored me. She was the only person that ever told me she was proud of me. She's the only person that ever told me I was doing a good job and really meant it and was she had my back no matter what. And she backed me up and she encouraged me to do better and would sit up and help me game plan to make my company grow. And what I'm saying is, if you have that person in your life, cherish them, adore them, take care of them. They only come once in a lifetime. And I had one. I still have her in my life. So we were married for a year at the time. And when we first got married, Jeanette got pregnant. And a year later, we had Frankie. Frankie was my second son. So now we had Tony was my son, Jordan was Jeanette's daughter, and Frankie we had together. So we had a blended family, yours, mine, and ours. And when Frankie was born, man, was he gorgeous. Beautiful kid and healthy. And everything was perfect. You know, we had the marriage, we had the baby, we had our other kids together. When Frankie was about 3, we noticed little things about his progressions. And he wasn't talking right away as a younger baby. Took him a while to walk. He started doing like stims with his hands at a young age. Like he would move his hands in certain ways. And it wasn't really that known, 18 years ago or 15 years ago. But our doctor recommended that we get him tested for autism. And we had him tested. And Frankie wound up being autistic. Very high functioning, he wound up being throughout his life. But as a baby, we didn't know that. And it was very heart-wrenching to find out that our kid had autism. Now, it's not like our kid had cancer or a heart defect or a brain tumor and he was going to die. but we knew he was going to be faced with many difficulties throughout his life, and stuff we would have as a family would have to overcome and persevere through. There's a lot of things with autism that people don't understand, and we can get into a whole segment about autism one day. But my son, Frankie, is amazing. He graduated high school this past year, and not only has he overcame a lot of setbacks with autism, he actually was the first kid to receive a special education award for not only being on the honor roll every semester he was in high school, but also helping other kids and being there for other kids and being an inspiration to other kids. And I cried at his graduation when he received that award, because no one knows how hard my son has fought in life to overcome that. And that was a testament to his pure strength. And we had a village around us with Frankie. All of our friends and family embraced Frankie and his autism. We always had such a great support group. All the kids we knew always wanted to babysit him because he was such an easy kid. Frankie is an amazing son. I'm proud to say he's in school right now to become an auto mechanic. He's really overcame a lot of adversity. And he's learned to accept, and not only accept it, but I don't want to say have fun with his autism, but he knows how to joke around about it. Like one time we were waiting in line for a movie. I think it was the Avengers movie. And the line was like an hour and a half long. And I'll never forget this. The kid looks at us and says, "Hey, screw this line. You want me to go like full autism and get us in right away?" And we were cracking up that he thought of this at like 13 years old, that he was going to use his autism to his advantage. It was so funny. And it was just like, the stuff he says is so funny, Like, yeah, he's just a great kid. And all three of my kids are amazing. Tony's doing great things, I've heard, and I've spoke to him once or twice in the past few years, and he's doing good things. And Frankie's in school to be an auto mechanic, and my daughter Jordan, she's a teacher and a nanny. She went to college, became a teacher. I'm very proud of all three of them, and I couldn't be happier with my life. A lot of things have turned out well. There's been a lot of stuff that I've done to this point to provide for my family and make sure my kids are taken care of. One thing is the construction. I've also owned the auto detailing business, and we'll have another segment on my businesses. I also owned a restaurant. We owned a hair salon, Jeanette and I. And with those companies came a lot of stress. And with that stress, put a lot of tension on our marriage. A lot of just stress about the companies. We really never fought personally. I can honestly say I had a great marriage. I have a great marriage. I'm still married to her. I'm a 100% honest, straight shooting person. We're not legally separated, but we're separated by space right now. I'm in Florida. She's in Illinois. Frankie had to finish high school. They don't really like the weather in Florida, and she wants to be around her mom. Her mom's in her 70s, excellent health, beautiful, amazing woman. She wants to be around her mom. So she has no plans to move to Florida. My company is flourishing out here in Florida, so I really can't move back to Illinois. So we see each other like every 6 to 8 weeks. I fly there, she flies here with Frankie. And it's been working. But it isn't always easy. You know, there was at one point where we did separate and we were talking about getting divorced and we overcame that. But she told me in these words, she would never find another man to provide for her, love her, or respect her and cherish her the way I do. But the stress of the companies and stuff that's happened in our life from the companies in life has just put too much on her. And she wanted me to get a job. She still to this day wants me to get a job. And I'm just determined to make my companies work because they do work. But she wants me to have the easy 9 to 5 life and not the stress of running a company 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, which it takes. And it's such a dilemma for me because I have the perfect wife, the perfect woman, a great family, but I would have to give up my passion and work for someone. And I seen at a young age what working for someone did for my mom. It didn't give us a great life. And I seen other people that owned companies that I've met and are entrepreneurs, and they've done great. And that's the life I chose, and that's the life I want to have. And unfortunately, it's almost came to where I have to choose between being an entrepreneur or living in the same state and growing my marriage on a everyday basis. So we talk 2-3 times a day, Jeanette and I. Me and Frankie talk every single day. I say good morning to him and I say good night and I talk to him about his day. Every conversation I have with Frankie, Tony, Jeanette, Jordan, my parents, even Jeanette's parents, it always ends with I love you. And that's something, if you don't say it to your family, I highly recommend you do, because you never know when you're on your way out the door. You never know when could be your last day. I've been faced, like I said, with death more times than most people. When Frankie was about 3 months old, I was on my boat with my cousin, Jeanette, and all of our kids. There were 17 of us on the boat, and my sister-in-law and her kids. And I was the one, my cousin was driving the boat, and I was the one to step off the boat to go tie it off. And when I stepped off my boat onto a pier at a marina, because we were going to buy a tube for our kids, wanted to go double tubing. The boys were real young. My godsons were on the boat, and my son Tony was on the boat, and they wanted to go double tubing. When I stepped off the boat, I stepped onto a pier, and the whole pier collapsed into the water. And I hit my head on the concrete walkway. I broke my neck and have had a bunch of surgeries in 3 different levels. I got 2 metal rods and a ball bearing in my neck right now. And long story short, I tore all the ligaments in my shoulders because the wood stayed about the width of my body apart, and my body fell straight down. It caught me underneath both my armpits, the wood, and it actually like separated my arms. The socket where your shoulder goes into your shoulder socket, I snapped them on both sides. Very traumatic injury. Like I said, a lot of people would have thrown in the towel. But because I had Jeanette by my side, because I had such a strong family, and because I had such a strong support system, I had 15 surgeries to get myself back in shape over the last 14 years. And you know what? I've missed a total with 15 surgeries of about 20 days of work. Total of 20 days of work from those surgeries. I didn't take the 6 weeks off to recover. I hired someone to drive me around. I didn't take the time to whine and complain and cry, why me? Why do I have to go through this? Why did I have to have this injury happen to me? I mean, I broke my neck, tore all the ligaments in both my shoulders. Both my shoulders are completely rebuilt. My neck and my shoulders hurt more every single day than anyone will ever know. I don't complain about it. I just keep moving on. I only have surgeries when the doctors tell me I definitely need to have one. I'm supposed to have a shoulder replacement. I won't do it because I can't work out if I have a shoulder replacement. So I live through the pain. A lot of people out there know a lot of people that would be on disability right now or crying and fight. I don't want that life. I don't need a $600 a month check. I don't need disability. Leave disability for the people that actually need it. I'm 47 years old. This happened to me when I was in my 30s. I could overcome it. There's a lot of people out there that, oh, I tweaked my back. Oh, I hurt my ankle. Oh, I got ingrown toenail. I need disability. You don't. You need to man up. You need to realize the life you want to have for you and your family. And you need to make it happen. And I'm not saying that disrespectfully if you definitely need this or disability. But you know there's some of you out there that don't need that shit. Or you know some people that don't need that shit. And they're getting that shit. And everyone talks about them. And you know they're just getting by with a basic life. Do you want that? Do you think they really want that? I'm living proof. You can overcome that. You can persevere through it. And one of the biggest reasons I persevered through it was when I broke my neck and had this accident, I was 28 years old. And my partner at the time, Hans, the guy I spoke about, and he's my mentor. I admire this guy more than most people in the world. He looked me right in the eyes, and I was scared. I'm 28. I got a new baby. I got a 6-year or 7-year-old son, and I'm scared. You know, I'm like, what am I gonna do? All I know is construction. What am I gonna do with my life? I don't know anything else. I don't know computers. I don't know technology. What the hell am I gonna do? He looked me right in the eyes and he's like, now I'm going to take you from having 3 guys in a kick-ass construction company where you're working the jobs to becoming a business construction owner. And from that point, I've never had less than 10 people working for me making less than 6 figures a month. Not profit, gross. But I gross 6 figures a month since that point in my life. And I'm very proud to say that. And that man inspired me to become something I had no idea how to do. He took me out of my comfort zone of swinging a hammer and made me a business owner. With all these surgeries came a lot of weight gain. With that weight gain came some other medical problems. And at this point in my life, I'm not embarrassed to say, with that weight gain, with all the stress of these surgeries, I could not have got by without medication. And I'm going to talk to you about something that's very serious and very private to me, but I'm going to talk about it on here. I do take medication for anxiety. I also take medication for depression. I was depressed. I take a lower dose now because I'm not depressed anymore, but it just keeps me evened out. Like I said, I grew up in an Italian family where medication was, ugats. You don't do that. You don't touch medication. You don't need medication. We're strong people. We overcome that without medication. Bullshit. I know a lot of my older family members that need medication, but they're too proud to touch the medication, and it will make their life a hell of a lot better because medication has leveled me out. The best thing I ever did was I took a test where they did a swab in my mouth, and it tells you what medication interacts with your DNA the best. And at that point, I found out the medication they had me on was all wrong. Then it was throwing me on tilt. So I was taking this medication. I felt better, not great, but it was actually the wrong medication. And when I did that swab test, I wound up taking the right medication that interacts with my DNA correctly. And I can honestly say I've never felt better. Never felt more positive. Never felt more open to trying new things. Never felt more energy. I've lost more weight. you know, in 2020, April 1st of 2020, a lot of you guys know this already that know me, I got COVID. I was sick. I wasn't feeling good for about 4 days. I had 103 fever. I worked every day with the 103 fever. On the fourth day, my fever hit 104, and I was delirious. I felt like my brain was a fried egg. And I was like, I looked at my wife, Jeanette, and I said, I don't feel too good. And she's like, what's the matter? And I said, I just don't feel good. I'm burning up. She took my temperature, and she's like, honey, you need to call the doctor. And she's like, something's wrong. Well, COVID was just starting to be talked about. I thought I had the flu. So I called my doctor, and he's like, Rick, call an ambulance. You need to get to the hospital right now. You might have that COVID stuff that's starting up. And I'm like, fuck that. I don't have the COVID. I was like, I got the flu. So I hung up the phone, and my wife's like, what'd the doctor say? I was like, he told me to drive to the hospital and go get checked out. I probably got the flu. I lied to her. I didn't want to believe I had COVID. So I get in the car, and I got 104 fever. I'm delirious. I told Jeanette, I was like, you got to stay on the phone with me because I can barely keep my eyes open. I keep wanting to fall asleep. I'm burning up. She's like, do you want me to take you? I'm like, no, you can't even go in the hospital. This COVID stuff is starting, and they don't allow people to come into the hospital with you. Why? What are you going to do? So I'll drive myself. So I drove myself, and my mind, the entrepreneur mind, I knew that there was one hospital where there was a ton of cases of this outbreak of this COVID going on. And I knew there was another hospital that was about 10 minutes further from my house in the opposite direction where that I could probably get better treatment because there was less patients there. So I go to this hospital. I show up. I'm in the emergency room for about a whole 5 minutes. They take my vitals. Next thing I know, they do the COVID test. I'm up in ICU. My oxygen levels, I was breathing really bad. I couldn't get any oxygen. I couldn't breathe. My oxygen levels are supposed to be in the high 90s. My oxygen levels were in the mid 80s. So the doctors put me in this reverse oxygen room, and they told me I got COVID. I was like, fuck, what's that mean? And he's like, well, you're not breathing good. We're going to put you in this reverse oxygen room and see how that works out for you. So I'm in the reverse oxygen room, and I'll never forget this. There was this guy nurse, and he looks at me, and he's like, your oxygen levels are going up. They're hitting the high 80s. He's like, thank God your oxygen levels are going up, because if not, we were really close to ventilating you. And if we have to ventilate you, only 15% of the people going on ventilators are living. I was like, oh man, great. I'm glad my oxygen levels are going up. So I'm excited now. I'm thinking I got the light at the end of the tunnel. 20 minutes later, the doctor comes in. He's like, your oxygen levels are plummeting. They're in the high 70s. We have 30 minutes to ventilate you before you die. I said, fuck you. I was like, you're not ventilating me. I was like, this guy just told me I'm going to die if you ventilate me. I was like, there's no way you're putting me on that ventilator. He's like, Rick, you got no choice. You're about to die if you don't go on the ventilator. I was like, Doc, I came here because I have the fucking flu. I was like, you're not putting me on a ventilator. I was like, there's no way in hell I'm letting you put me on a ventilator. I said, leave me awake. I was like, you know how many times I've been faced with death? I was like, you leave me awake, I'll fight this. I was like, but you're not putting me on a ventilator. So these oxygen levels are plummeting even more now. I can't breathe. I could barely get words out at this point. So they called Jeanette, the only person in the world that can get through to me. She's the only person I listen to. She's the only person I really trust wholeheartedly that has my best intentions. So Jeanette gets on the phone with me, and she's like, Rick, honey, you need to go on a ventilator. And I was like, hon, I'm going to fucking die if I go on this ventilator. I got a 15% chance to live, and I'm going to be asleep, and I can't fight this. And she's like, honey, you got to go on the ventilator. So now my doctor showed up at the hospital. He's in the ICU with me. I'm on a table. I got the hospital doctor, my doctor there. I got a priest, on my one side reading me my last rites. I'm on the phone with Jeanette, Frankie on speakerphone, and my mom on a three-way call. My mom's crying. I'm not supposed to bury another one of my kids. My dad's crying. Jeanette's in tears. Frankie's crying. I'm in tears. I'm telling Frankie to be a good boy, always treat women right, always do the right things. If I'm not here to show you these things, be good to your mother, always be a good person in life, and always do the things you want to do in life, because you never know when your life's going to end. And I'm trying to be a father all in 5 minutes and wrap up my life. I'm trying to tell Jeanette all the codes for the life insurance, all the passwords for my phones and computers. And I'm in tears. I'm thinking I'm never going to see them again. I came to the hospital with the flu. So I say my goodbyes, tell everybody I love them, and they put me on a ventilator. I was on a ventilator for about 2 weeks. And before I went on the ventilator, the doctor told Jeanette, I grabbed him by his shirt, and I said, I am fucking waking up. And he told me, you're a hard-headed motherfucker. I'm sure you're going to wake up. I'm sure of it. He's like, you seem like a hard-headed, tough guy. Now, at that time, I was 315 pounds. I used to work out like a beast, but I was very heavy from the medications. So I was fat and strong. And that actually played into helping me get through this. I went on the ventilator and I woke up from the ventilator. And there's a really funny story how I woke up on the ventilator, but we'll do that another time because we're running out of time here. I'll tell you all about that and my life in the hospital on COVID. But I wound up beating COVID and the ventilator. Woke up a few weeks later, was in the hospital for 2 months. And I realized that COVID was having such an outbreak. My doctor told me I had to have gastric bypass surgery because if I got COVID again, I had got pre-diabetes, I would die. There was no chance to save me. With the COVID outbreak, if I got COVID again with my weight, I was going to die. So I had gastric bypass about 3 years ago. And with gastric bypass, and I take that Ozempic shot for the pre-diabetes, I'm proud to say I've lost 120 pounds. I was 310 pounds. I'm 190 pounds now. I work out. I eat healthy. Take my medicine and do what I need to do. So that's a quick synopsis of my life. There's a lot more in my life that we're going to talk about in different episodes. I'm going to bring someone in right now that's been wanting to get on camera for the last 3 weeks. Come here, Jax. Come here. Come here, buddy. Say hi. This is my buddy. This is Jax, everybody. Jax is my best friend. When I came to Florida by myself, he was a 6-month-old puppy. He's 4 years old now. Say hi to camera. Say hi, camera. Look Jax. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's Jax. And he's going to be 4 years old in a couple months. And he's got me through so much. This is the best medication I ever had. If you have a dog, treat that dog like he's your child. If you don't have a dog or a pet, I highly recommend getting one. Because he's the greatest dog I've ever had. He's my best friend. He goes everywhere with me. Every day I go to work, he's in the car with me. My whole back seat is set up like a little palace for him. And this is Jax. So you guys will see more of Jax, but he's been dying to get on this camera for the last 3 episodes. So that's my life. Dying, not succeeding, and failure was not an option. And I'm living proof that you can overcome a lot of stuff with the right people and pets by your side. You can make your life whatever you want it to be. So remember again, failure and not succeeding and giving up is not an option. Thank you for joining us. Please hit that subscribe button. Please share these videos. And please, let's make this podcast work. I'm putting my heart and soul into this thing every week. I'm opening up to you guys more than I've ever opened up in my life. And I really want this to work. So make it work with me, guys. Thank you.